The desert winds screamed across the jagged rocks of Terex 9, a planet known for its deadly beasts and ancient ruins. The sky shimmered orange, and dust storms danced in the distance. No human had ever walked here before. Not until now. Dax was not a soldier. He was a wanderer, a man from Earth who followed no orders and feared no death. His ship had crash-landed near the Krillian border, deep inside a territory forbidden to outsiders. Most would have begged for rescue. Dax simply walked out of the flames. Above him, alien patrol ships scanned the canyons. Below, in the shadows of the rocks, the ground shook with the heavy steps of something far more dangerous. Apex beasts roamed here. Giant creatures with armored hides, venomous fangs, and strength enough to split tanks in two. Even the Krillian warriors, known for their brutality, avoided this cursed place. But Dax kept moving. On a nearby ridge, a young alien warrior watched him. Her name was Sarixa, daughter of General Vor, trained in combat since birth. She had seen many species crawl and die on this land, but none like this man. He was calm, steady, almost bored, as if the danger around him wasn't even worth noticing. Sarixa activated her helmet's scan. It read the beast behind him as a Class 10 predator, one of the deadliest creatures ever recorded. It was stalking him, jaws twitching, tail coiled, ready to strike. She moved to warn him, but Dax turned around first. The beast charged. Its roar shattered the canyon walls. Sarixa braced for the sound of torn flesh, but it never came. In one fluid motion, Dax leapt forward, spun on the creature's snout, and grabbed the back of its neck. His hands found a pressure point, and the beast collapsed like a dropped stone. In seconds, he was on its back, calm and upright, as the apex predator growled beneath him. Sarixa's breath caught. "You can't ride that beast," she whispered, stepping into the open, stunned. Dax looked at her like she was the surprise. "Why not?" Before she could answer, the sky above them lit up. Explosions. Krillian warships, retreating. Something was coming from the north. Something big enough to push the Krillians back. Sarixa tapped her comlink. Static. No signal. "What's coming?" she asked. Dax looked to the horizon. The air shimmered with heat, but he could see them. Hundreds of shadows moving fast. "War," he said. She turned to him again, confused. "You're not a soldier. How do you know that?" "I've seen war. It always moves like that." She stared at the human and the beast he had tamed. He wasn't wearing armor, and yet nothing seemed to touch him. The apex predator, one of the wildest creatures on this planet, now followed his command. Something had shifted in this desert. Sarixa didn't know if it was luck, power, or something older than both. But she did know one thing. This human was not ordinary, and whatever storm was coming, she was no longer sure if she should fight beside him or stay out of his way. The creature beneath Dax snorted, muscles rippling under its thick, scaled hide. It didn't fight him anymore. It breathed with him, as if something deep in its blood had accepted him as its master. Sarixa had seen many warriors try to kill such a beast. Most didn't live long enough to scream, but now the beast stood still, obeying a stranger from another world. It made no sense. "You. How did you do that?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost afraid of the answer. Dax didn't look at her. His eyes stayed locked on the horizon, where the shadows grew clearer. Hundreds of armored riders crawling across the desert on massive crawlers and beasts. They weren't Krillians, and they weren't friendly. "I didn't do anything," Dax said finally. "I just understood it." Sarixa frowned. "Understood what?" "The beast. Its rage, its loneliness, its hunger to survive." She wanted to laugh at that, but she couldn't, because the beast now leaned into Dax's touch like a loyal war mount. The ground began to shake harder. The invading force was closer now. They wore armor made of bones and black metal. Some carried heavy rifles. Others held blades bigger than Sarixa's entire body. But all of them had one thing in common. red, glowing eyes that pulsed like fire. "They're not from any house I know," Syrixa said, voice tight. "They're not from this planet," Dax replied, "and they're not here to talk." A moment later, the lead invader shouted something in a guttural language. The army stopped. Dust swirled between both groups. The invader raised a long, clawed hand and pointed directly at Syrixa, then at Dax, then at the beast. "Challenge." "They want to claim territory," Syrixa said, hand on her blade. "They're going to try," Dax said. She moved to stand beside him, but he raised a hand. "Stay back. You don't command me, human. I'm not commanding. I'm warning." Before she could argue, Dax leaned forward. He whispered something to the apex predator. The beast snarled, then launched forward in a blur of power and speed. Syrixa's eyes widened. Dax didn't attack the army. He charged straight at their leader. The invader barely raised his weapon before Dax was on him. The beast slammed into the alien warlord, cracking his armor like glass. Dax jumped down, landed on the enemy's chest, and drove his fist into the beast's snarling face. The impact echoed across the rocks. The army roared and surged forward. Syrixa didn't wait. She sprinted into the chaos, blade drawn, heart pounding. Dax fought without hesitation. Every move was precise, brutal, and direct. He didn't use high-tech weapons or shields. He used instinct. Every time an invader struck at him, he dodged like he knew what they'd do before they did it. Beside him, the beast tore through enemy lines like a storm of scales and teeth. Syrixa joined the fight, spinning and slicing, her armor deflecting deadly blows. But something inside her had changed. She wasn't leading this fight. She was following him. And for the first time in her life, she didn't mind. The battle raged for nearly an hour. When it ended, the sand was dark with blood, and silence returned to the desert. Dax stood tall, beast at his side, both untouched. Syrixa stepped forward, panting. You fought like you were born on this world." Dax looked down at the broken body of the warlord. "Maybe I was meant to find it." Smoke rose from the battlefield. The sand, once golden, now held the marks of war. Cracked armor, shattered blades, and scorched earth surrounded them. The wind carried a strange silence, one that only came after violence. Dax stood with the apex predator beside him. Its chest heaved slowly, blood dripping from its jaw, but its eyes stayed calm, loyal. Syrixa wiped the dirt from her cheek. She stared at the bodies scattered around. These weren't simple raiders. Their armor, their weapons, it was all too advanced, too foreign. "I've never seen tech like that," she said. "Even the Krylian High Guard doesn't carry gear like this." Dax crouched beside one of the fallen enemies and pulled a broken helmet free. Inside was a face not entirely alive. Its skin was pale and cracked, its veins glowing faintly red. "This isn't just tech," Dax muttered. "Something else is controlling them." Syrixa's eyes narrowed. "You mean they're not soldiers? They're puppets." That word sent a chill through her. She had trained all her life for war, but war had rules, leaders, honor. This was something else. Dax stood and looked to the horizon again. "There will be more. You're not from our system. How do you know all this?" Dax didn't answer right away. He looked at the beast and placed a firm hand on its neck. It growled softly, not in anger, but as if it understood the tension. "I've seen worlds fall," he said. "Earth wasn't the first planet I walked. I've been hunted, imprisoned. I've fought beings that no one would believe." Syrixa stepped closer, her voice softer now. "Why come here?" "I didn't choose this place. I crashed here, but you're not trying to escape. I never run." A sudden roar echoed in the distance. Not from a beast, it was mechanical. The sky lit up with streaks of blue light. Dropships, unlike any she'd seen before, descended toward the distant cliffs. Dozens of them. "They're dropping more," Syrixa said. Dax nodded. "And we're not ready. Then we go back to base. We regroup. I'll call the command chain. You don't have time for that." "What do you mean?" Dax pointed toward the dropships. "They're not invading, they're harvesting. Syrixa froze. Harvesting what? Life. The word hit her like a punch. Dax walked toward a nearby cliff ledge. The predator followed. He looked down into the dark valley below. Massive machines, shaped like insects, crawled across the sand. They were dragging bodies, Krillian and alien, into glowing containers. They're collecting anything living or dead, Dax said. They don't care who you are. Syrixa stared in horror. They're consuming the dead? No. They're converting them. She backed away. This is beyond war. This is extinction. Dax turned to her. Then stop acting like a soldier. You need to start thinking like a survivor. Syrixa hated how calm he sounded, but she couldn't deny it anymore. The man, who rode an apex predator, now stood between her and total destruction, and strangely, it gave her comfort. She looked up at the beast again. It stared back, not as an animal, but as a creature that had accepted the storm to come. What do we do? She asked. Dax didn't blink. We ride into the storm before it reaches us. They moved fast through the canyon, the predator's heavy steps shaking the ground. Dax rode like he had done it all his life. The wind cut across his face, but he didn't flinch. Behind him, Syrixa kept pace, jumping across sharp rocks and broken paths like a shadow. The sky above them was darker now. Thick smoke trailed from the dropships as they vanished behind the cliffs. Far ahead, the strange machines kept crawling, dragging everything they touched into glowing chambers. The closer they got, the colder the air became. These things, Syrixa said between breaths. How do we stop them? You don't, Dax replied. You break what controls them. And what's that? We'll find out soon. Syrixa hated answers like that, but something about Dax's tone made her trust it. He wasn't guessing. He knew pain, loss, battle. He didn't speak much, but his silence held more truth than a general's speech. They reached a ridge overlooking the valley. From there, they saw the full horror. The machines were building a structure. Tall, black, pulsing with red veins. It looked alive. It wasn't just a base. It was a heart, a beating center of something that wasn't supposed to be here. Syrixa took a step back. That's not tech, that's something else. Dax nodded. It's called a hive core. You've seen it before? Once. On a moon near Rigel. That moon doesn't exist anymore. She stared at him. And you think we can destroy that? Dax looked at her with calm eyes. I don't think. I act. Before she could reply, the apex beast growled low and sharp. Its eyes locked on a figure standing at the base of the hive core. It wasn't a machine. It was something tall, armored in dark bone with a helmet shaped like a skull. Its arms moved slowly, almost like it was feeling the air. Then it looked up, directly at them. Even from far away, Syrixa felt her chest tighten. Her body froze. What is that? She whispered. That, Dax said, is the hive speaker. It raised a long staff glowing red at the tip. The machines below stopped moving. Then all at once they turned and began climbing the valley, toward them. Syrixa pulled her weapon. We can't fight all of them. We don't have to. Dax jumped down from the beast and placed both hands on the ground. He closed his eyes. The beast turned its head, watching him closely. What are you doing? Syrixa asked. I'm waking something up. The ground rumbled, not from the machines, but from beneath. Suddenly the rocks cracked open, and from the deep canyon walls, older shapes began to rise, stone giants, covered in dust and vines, sleeping titans built by ancient hands. Syrixa stared in awe. These are myth, she whispered. No, Dax said. They're guardians. The titans opened their eyes, glowing blue. One turned its massive head and looked directly at Dax. It bowed. The hive machines charged up the slope. Dax stood, his voice firm. We hold the line here. Syrixa had no words, only action. She ran to his side as the ancient guardians took their first step forward in centuries. The ancient guardians stepped forward with thunder in their steps. Each one stood taller than a dropship, carved from stone but moving with the strength of something alive. Their blue eyes burned like stars in the shadowed canyon. Sarixa had trained with elite warriors. She had fought in war zones across 3 systems, but nothing she had seen compared to this. The hive machines rushed up the slope screeching like insects. Their claws tore into the rocks. Their weapons glowed red. There were too many of them to count. But the Guardians didn't wait. With one swing, a stone titan smashed through a line of crawlers. Metal shattered like glass. Sparks filled the air. Dax didn't hesitate. He climbed back onto the apex predator and charged down the slope. The beast roared, its voice shaking the cliffs. It leapt into battle, biting, crushing, tossing machines aside like toys. Sarixa followed, blade ready. The air burned with heat and sparks. She moved like lightning between machines, slicing limbs and dodging blasts. Her armor was scorched, her lungs full of dust, but she kept fighting. The Guardians fought without fear. When one was wounded, it kept moving. When one fell, 2 others crushed the machines that did it. Dax seemed to move with them as if he had trained with giants. But even with the Guardians, the Hive's forces kept coming. More machines poured from the cliffs. Flying drones buzzed overhead, firing lasers that cut deep into stone and flesh. One drone hit a Guardian's neck, sending it crashing into the rocks. Sarixa ducked behind broken metal. "There's no end to them." "There is," Dax shouted, "but not here." He pointed toward the Hive core, the strange, pulsing tower in the valley. "They're linked to that thing. As long as it stands, they'll keep coming. Then, let's destroy it." "No. You'll die before reaching it on foot." Sarixa stared at him. "Then what?" Dax looked down at the beast under him. The apex predator growled, ready for more. "I ride through. You'll be shot out of the sky." Dax looked at her, and for the first time she saw something else in his eyes. Not rage, not calm, a spark of madness. "Only if I miss." Sarix's heart pounded. "That's suicide. Then I'll see what waits after." Before she could stop him, Dax leaned forward and whispered something to the beast. It roared, then began sprinting toward the hive core, through fire, through machines, through the unknown. Sarixa turned to join him, but a wave of drones dropped down in front of her, cutting off her path. She swung her blade, blocked shots, dodged, fire. But she couldn't follow. She could only watch. The beast leapt from rock to rock, dodging blasts, outrunning explosions. Dax held tight, guiding it with his knees, his hands gripping bone ridges on its neck. The hive speaker raised its staff again. A bolt of energy ripped through the sky, aiming straight for Dax. The moment slowed. Sarixa screamed his name. The energy hit the beast, but instead of falling, it absorbed the light. The creature glowed, and then surged forward with even more speed. It wasn't just strong, it had evolved. Dax and the beast vanished into the storm of fire near the hive core. Then came silence. Sarixa dropped to her knees, breath shallow. Around her, the Guardians kept fighting. But her eyes stayed on the valley. He had ridden straight into death, or something beyond it. Flames burned in the valley, but Dax didn't fall. The beast charged through walls of fire and smoke like a force of nature. Hive machines jumped to block their path, but they were too slow. The apex predator moved like it had waited its whole life for this one mission. Dax leaned low, every muscle locked, his eyes fixed on the hive core. The black tower pulsed with red light. The closer he got, the louder the hum became, like a scream, buried beneath the surface. He felt it in his bones. It wasn't just a machine, it was alive. The hive speaker stood at the base and staff raised, its voice howling in a strange, broken language. Dax didn't wait. The predator leapt straight at the tower, claws forward. The speaker sent another energy blast from its staff, but this time the beast twisted midair. The blast missed. They hit the base of the hive core like a meteor. The impact shattered the stone floor. Dax was thrown clear, landing hard, rolling across the ground. He groaned but stood. Around him everything shook. The tower screamed. The predator didn't move. It lay beside the tower, chest rising slowly. Dax crawled to it, placing a hand on its side. "Not yet," he whispered. The beast's eye flickered open, then closed again. He turned back to the hive core. The wall in front of him was no longer stone. It had opened. A doorway of red light waited. He stepped through. Inside, everything changed. The space was massive, bigger than it looked from outside. Pulsing lights ran across walls made of bone and metal. Strange symbols moved like rivers, alive and changing. Dax walked forward, his boots echoing. In the center, floating above a pit of black mist, was the heart, a sphere of pure red energy, and voices, whispers, thousands of them. Not speaking to him, speaking through him. Memories, pain, war, hunger. The hive wasn't a species. It was a mind. One endless mind reaching across space, consuming anything it touched. Dax knew what he had to do. He pulled a small crystal shard from a pouch on his belt. It glowed blue. He had carried it for years, ever since Rigel. A piece of something older than the hive. He climbed a platform near the core and pressed the shard into the structure. The red light pulsed violently. The hive screamed. Outside, Sarixa felt it. As she cut through a drone's neck, her body froze. The machine stopped mid-attack. Their eyes flickered. Some dropped, lifeless. Others twisted and turned on each other. The Guardians paused, unsure. Then, in the distance, the hive core cracked. Then light burst from it, white and blue, not red. The entire valley lit up. Sarixa covered her face, heart racing. "Dax!" When the light faded, the tower was gone. Only smoke and silence remained. She ran down the slope, leaping over bodies and ash. The Guardians made a path for her. When she reached the base of the destroyed core, she saw the beast lying in the rubble. She dropped to her knees. It opened one eye, then moved its head aside. Dax lay beneath it, covered in dust, but alive. Sarixa pulled him up. "You insane fool, you did it." He coughed and gave a tired smile. "Told you I don't miss." They sat in silence as the dust settled. But far above them, high in the black sky, something else blinked to life. A signal had been sent and something darker had received it. Smoke drifted across the broken valley. The hive core was gone, reduced to glowing ruins. The machines had stopped moving. Their twisted metal bodies lay scattered like broken statues. But Dax didn't smile. He stood beside the beast, his hand resting gently on its wounded shoulder. The predator was breathing, slow and shallow. Its scales had cracked. Blue veins of energy pulsed just under the surface. Sarixa watched in silence. She had never seen a bond like theirs, between predator and prey, turned into something more. "What, now?" she asked quietly. Dax didn't look at her. "That was just one node, one piece of the hive. You think there are more? I know there are, and now they know we fought back." Sarixa turned toward the dark sky. The sun had vanished behind thick clouds. A chill ran through her armor. "What did you see in there?" "A mind. Endless. Cold. It doesn't hate us, it doesn't care, it just feeds." She stayed silent. Dax finally turned to face her. "If we wait, it comes again, stronger, smarter. Then we fight again. Not like this. Next time we won't be lucky." Sarixa stepped closer. "You're not like other humans." "I stopped being one a long time ago." That answer left a hollow echo between them. Far above, the sky shimmered. A black shape moved through the clouds, massive and slow. A ship. No, not a ship. A watcher. Round and smooth like a floating eye. It drifted silently above the ruins. Sarixa drew her blade. "No," Dax said. "It's not here to attack." "Then what?" "It's listening." The eye pulsed once, then fired a beam into the wreckage of the hive core. Smoke cleared. The debris vanished. "They're collecting their dead," Dax whispered. "Learning." The watcher floated for another moment. Then, silently, it turned and disappeared into the sky. Sarixa lowered her blade. How do we fight something that doesn't even speak? We don't, Dax said. Not here. He looked at the wounded beast. Then where? She asked. Dax pointed toward the cliffs. There's a place. An old vault. Buried before your people built cities. It holds what came before the hive. You know where it is? I've been there once, barely escaped. Why return? Because it has something I need. Something that can destroy hive minds from the inside. Sarixa looked at him, unsure. You think one weapon will end this? Dax shook his head. It's not a weapon, it's a choice. She didn't understand, but she knew this. He wasn't bluffing. Sarixa nodded. Then we go together. Dax climbed onto the beasts. Back again. The creature groaned but stood. Sarixa climbed up behind him. For the first time she felt small, not because of the size of the beast but because of what lay ahead. They rode into the canyon, toward something older than war, toward a vault that hadn't been opened in thousands of years. As they disappeared into the shadows, the guardians returned to stone. The wind carried no sound. But far above the planet, inside a deep corner of the galaxy, hive minds began to stir. One planet had resisted. Now the hive would answer. The sun barely touched the canyon as they rode, deeper into the mountain range. Old ruins covered in vines and dust whispered of a time even Sarixa's people had forgotten. The apex predator moved slower now, its strength nearly spent, but its will unbroken. Sarixa clung to Dax's back, her mindful of questions, the hive, the watcher, the voices. It all felt too big. But one thing kept her steady. Dax had faced all of it before. They reached a crack in the cliff wall. Hidden behind layers of stone was a door, round and ancient, marked with glowing lines that pulsed at their approach. The beast stopped. Dax slid down, helping Sarixa to the ground. This is it, he said. She stepped closer. What's inside? He pressed a hand to the door. The symbols lit brighter. The metal groaned, and slowly, the door slid open. Cold. Air rushed out. Inside was a wide chamber, silent and untouched. Giant statues stood in a circle, alien shapes with eyes closed and arms outstretched. At the center floated a crystal orb, humming with quiet power. Beneath it lay dust, bones, and shattered weapons. This was a council, Dax said. They tried to stop the hive. They failed. Sarixa moved slowly, eyes scanning the room. But the orb survived. Dax nodded. It holds memory, not just data, but will. The will of those who fought. If I bond with it, I can enter the hive mind. And destroy it? No, he said. Challenge it. Sarixa turned to him. You mean, speak to it. I mean, offer it something it's never known. Choice. You think that will work? Dax looked at her. If it doesn't, I die. Silence filled the vault. Then Sarixa stepped forward. Then we do it together. Dax placed both hands on the orb. It pulsed. Light swirled faster and faster. The chamber trembled. The apex predator growled, backing up, but didn't leave. Sarixa placed her hand beside his. Light engulfed them. In a blink, they were somewhere else. A void. Endless and dark. No ground. No sky. Only stars that blinked like eyes. Then came the voice. No words. Only pressure. Like thought slamming into their minds. You are not hive. You are not needed. Dax stood firm. I know. Why speak? Because you don't understand why we fight. We consume. We improve. We continue. You survive. But you don't live. There was silence. Then pressure again. Pain. Suffering. War. These are yours. Not ours. Sarixa stepped forward. But love, hope, freedom, those are ours too. You've never tried them. The stars shimmered. We are many. We are one. You offer weakness. Dax shook his head. We offer meaning. The stars flickered. Some vanished. What is meaning? Dax closed his eyes. For a moment he saw the beast beside him. He saw Syrixa's hand in his. He saw Earth. He saw every planet the hive had touched. Then he whispered, "It's something you don't take. It's something you choose." The light swelled. The stars went dark. When Dax and Syrixa opened their eyes again, they were back in the vault. The orb was gone. Above them, the sky had cleared. The Watcher in orbit had vanished. And the machines, everywhere, had stopped permanently. The war was over. Dax fell to his knees, exhausted. Syrixa knelt beside him. "You reached them. I gave them a reason not to fight. Maybe that's all it ever takes." Outside, the apex predator waited, strong once more. It lowered its head as they stepped into the sun. Dax looked to the sky. For the first time in years it was quiet, and in that silence the universe changed. Forever.